Hello everyone, and welcome back to The Lost Planeswalker. You are here with me, Jesse, the Lost Planeswalker, and today I'm going to talk about the Science Precon Upgrade Guide, and the deck is from the Fallout Commander decks. This is the second video I've done. I did Dogmeat already, and I'm going to do Science now. And this was a very interesting deck because it brought back energy counters, which is something we haven't seen since Kaladesh, really. So seeing this is really neat, and I think we're going to get another deck in Modern Horizons 3 that focuses around energy, so this is a very good time to see energy and see what's out there. But the two commanders for this Science deck is Dr. Madison Lee and Liberty Prime Recharged. Two very cool energy-based commanders, so let's talk about them and see what they do. Dr. Madison Lee is a Jeskai, or a blue, red, white legendary creature human scientist. Whenever you cast an artifact spell, you get an energy. Tap, pay 1 energy, target creature gets +1/+0 and gains trample and haste until end of turn. Pay 3 energy, draw a card. Pay 5 energy, return target artifact card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. So we have a lot of really great potential. For just 5 energy, you can return any artifact right onto the battlefield. And there's so many great ones, and we're going to get into what cards I think you should play based on energy stuff, and then also based on artifact stuff, specifically around that ability. But secondly, Liberty Prime Recharged is 2 blue, red, white, legendary artifact creature robot. Vigilance, trample, haste. When Liberty Prime Recharged attacks or blocks, sack it unless you pay 2 energy. 2 and tap, sack an artifact, you get 2 energy, and draw a card. Liberty Prime is also pretty great in this deck. Not only can you just tap and sack an artifact to gain energy, but you also get card draw, and because this is Vigilance, you can just swing with this, and then at the end of your turn, or before your next turn, sack an artifact as well. So a lot of really good potential here, and I'm not going to run through all the cards, but there was 36 other new cards in this deck. And I think, honestly, a lot of these are some of the best energy cards ever printed. Not all of them focus around energy. Some are some other great cards. So I'm going to leave the description in the deck list below so you can go and check out all those new cards and see what I decided to add. But let's start right by talking about what am I going to do with this deck. Normally, in an upgrade guide, I decide to cut some cards, but really, there's not a lot of energy cards out there. And this is some of the best energy cards ever made. And this deck actually, I think, works really well. There are maybe 1 or 2 cards I wouldn't put in this deck, but it's not enough to say, you know, you have to get rid of them altogether. More or less what I want to do with this video is suggest cards for you to add, because I think this deck plays really well, but if you really want to focus down one strategy, that's the way I want to help you build this deck. So I'm going to talk about big energy focus and then big artifacts, right? We want to generate as much energy as possible to do all of our fun stuff, or we want to be able to get all those big artifacts onto the battlefield for free and help us win. You know, maybe they're not all big, but they might help us do something big. So starting out at the big energy focus, the 3 cards I want to start out with are Aether Hub, Aether Squall Ancient, and Aethertide Whale. So Aether Hub is a land that says when it enters the battlefield, you get an energy. Okay, I don't know why this card's not in this deck, but then you have tap to add a colorless of your mana pool, or pay an energy, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. In the early game, this is great because it triggers anything that cares about you making energy, and then you can use that energy just and turn it into a command tower, which seems really good. Aether Squall Ancient says at the beginning of your upkeep, gain 3 energy, which is sick. You know, obviously a 7 mana spell, you want it to do that. But for 8 energy, return all other creatures to their owner's hands. Activate this ability only anytime you could cast a sorcery. So this is kind of a repeatable board wipe, and there's a lot of cards that just care about you gaining energy when you play them. So honestly, Aether Squall Ancient seems pretty sick. This is a great card, and I think it's going to be very valuable to kind of end game stuff, making your opponents pick up all their stuff. And then Aethertide Whale is 6 mana creature whale with flying. When Aethertide Whale enters battlefield, you get 6 energy, then you can pay 4 energy to return Aethertide Whale to its owner's hand. This isn't going to generate you the most energy, but if you have an excess of mana, you can kind of cast this and then replay it over and over again to just rack up energy, or creature entering the battlefield effects, or energy entering the battlefield effects. So there's a lot of good stuff to work with here. Next up after that, we have Aetherworks Marvel, Decoction Module, and Fabrication Module. So Aetherworks Marvel, for generic legendary artifact, whenever a permanent you control is put into the graveyard, you get an energy counter. Pay 6 energy, look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may cast a card from among them without paying its mana cost. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. If you don't have anything good in your graveyard to recur with Dr. Madison Lee, well, Aetherworks Marvel's here for you, and you could use that energy to just cast stuff off the top of your library. The could very well end up being exactly what you need to win the game. Next is Decoction Module artifact. Whenever a creature enters battlefield under control, you get an energy. 4, tap, return target creature card you control to its owner's hand. And Fabrication Module, 3 generic artifact. Whenever you get 1 or more energy, put a +1/+1 counter on a target creature you control. 4, tap, you get an energy. Well, that second ability I don't think is as good. You're going to be gaining a lot of energy in this deck, especially with all the new cards I added. So you're going to be able to place a ton of +1/+1 counters. The last 2 cards I want to talk about here are Gonti's Aetherheart and Lightning Runner. Gonti's Aetherheart, I think, is just a staple card in any energy deck, and I understand they probably couldn't have added it to the Fallout deck because it's specifically Gonti's Aetherheart, and it just doesn't go with the fun flavor of Fallout. But it is a legendary artifact. Whenever Gonti's Aetherheart or another artifact enters the battlefield under your control, get 2 energy. Pay 8 energy, exile Gonti's Aetherheart. Take an extra turn after this one. I've seen this deck pop off, and in particular, if you can take an extra turn, you pretty much can win the game. So I really love that effect. And Lightning Runner is 3 red creature human warrior with double strike and haste. Whenever Lightning Runner attacks, you get 2 energy counters. Then you may pay 8 energy. If you pay, untap all creature cards you control, and after this phase, there's an additional combat phase. The other way I've seen this deck really win is by getting all of your stuff back and then just swinging out for combat damage. So giving you an extra combat for 8 energies seems very, very good. So now we're going to talk about the big artifacts, but before we do that, I just want to say real quickly, if you aren't subscribed to my channel, please do so. In addition to building this deck, I'm going to be building a commander from this deck, and I believe the one I'm really interested is Red Death Shipwrecker. Is a legendary crab mutant with alluring eyes. Tap, go target creature an opponent controls. That player draws a card, and you add a red. Why this card was made this way, and kind of see what we can build with it, because it seems like a very fun strategy to build around. So stay tuned if you want to see that video. But now let's look at those big artifacts I included, and I tried to do a good mix of powerful artifacts and powerful artifact creatures. So starting out, we have Akroma's Memorial, Blightsteel Colossus, and Darksteel Forge. Akroma's Memorial is 7 mana, legendary artifact. Creatures you control have flying, first strike, vigilance, trample, haste, and protection from red and black. This is a great artifact. It is a game ender, and if you can just kind of pop this out there, there's no doubt you're going to be a threat. But next up, probably one of the meanest cards, and it's very good in pretty much any artifact deck, is Blightsteel Colossus. 12 generic mana artifact creature Golem, trample, infect, indestructible. If Blightsteel Colossus would be put into a graveyard from anywhere, reveal Blightsteel Colossus and shuffle it into its owner's library. So this is a game ender, especially if we're able to, take it back out and just wait a turn and be able to swing in for the win. And then Darksteel Forge is 9 generic mana artifact. Artifacts you control have indestructible, just turning your entire board into a huge threat that is very hard to deal with. Next up, we have Forsaken Monument, Cauldron Complete, and Nettlecyst. Forsaken Monument is 5 generic mana. Legendary artifact, colorless creatures you control get +2/+2. Whenever you tap a permanent for colorless mana, add an additional colorless mana. Whenever you cast a colorless spell, you gain 2 life. While I don't think this card is perfect in this deck because pretty much all of our creatures have a color to them, the other 2 effects are really good because we have a lot of things that tap for colorless mana, and we also have a lot of things that are colorless, whether it's artifacts or equipment, and that ends up being able to net us a lot of life over the game. So I think it's well worth to include. But Cauldron Complete, 7 generic artifact, equipment, living weapon, which means when it enters, you equip it to a germ token, indestructible. Equipped creature gets +5/+5, has first strike, trample, indestructible, haste, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a creature, exile that creature. Equipped for 7. Being able to put this straight onto the battlefield with that germ token is just going to be great, and it's going to be a huge threat that even if they remove, we can bring it back again, and it's just going to be a threat all over again. And then Nettlecyst, one of my favorite cards, specifically because we have so many artifacts in this deck. But again, living weapon, and equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each artifact and enchantment you control. There's going to be a lot of them. We're hopefully going to give it indestructible. We're going to be gaining a ton of energy, so this seems like the perfect card for this deck. And the last 3 cards I want to talk about are Platinum Angel, Portal to Phyrexia, and Triplicate Titan. Platinum Angel, one of the best kind of game stallers until you can win, potentially. 7 generic mana artifact creature Angel with flying. You can't lose the game, and your opponents can't win the game. This could be something you do just in response to somebody's going to win. Well, you can just pay 5 energy, return this to the battlefield, and maybe stall out until you can win the game. Portal to Phyrexia is next. 9 generic artifact. Whenever Portal to Phyrexia enters the battlefield, each opponent sacks 3 creatures. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. It's a Phyrexian in addition to its other types. Honestly, if our opponents kill this and we can get it back out, we just have to make them sack even more creatures, and then we get to get more stuff. So this is an awesome, really powerful card that we love to play in decks that can cheat them out. And talking about 9 mana cards, we have Triplicate Titan, which is an artifact creature golem with flying, vigilance, and trample. And when it dies, it makes 3 creatures that are all 3/3s. One has vigilance, one has trample, one has flying. And it's just great. Again, if this dies, we can get it back and just get more good stuff out of it. So I really like the way that I decided to kind of go with this deck. You know, like I said, if you want to play this as an energy-specific deck, I think go for it. There's not a lot of energy-specific cards that I think are much better to put in this deck than the ones I listed. If you want to go big artifacts, you know, maybe start removing some of the cards that you're not going to be playing in hopes to, you know, kind of get that back. But this is what I suggest, and I hope you like it. So thank you so much for watching. Please leave a comment down below on what you think about the cards I decided to include or the way I decided to go with this deck. Is there a card you really don't think should go in this deck, or do you think there's cards that should go in this deck? I would love to hear about it in the comments down below. If you would please share this video with a friend, leave a like, and subscribe. That would mean the world to me. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And today's Scryfall card of the day is Vigor Mortis. After the fears and weakness rot away, that which remains is stronger than its living form. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you later, Planeswalkers.